Hi, welcome to Your Simple Golf Swing. I'm Matt. In this video, I want to talk about selecting the right clubs for your game. This past week, I got a question from one of my viewers, Andrew. And Andrew said, Matt, with all the customization out there and all the different clubs to select from, it's kind of confusing. Could you give your recommendations on how to select clubs? Well, my number one recommendation may surprise you, and it's nothing more than going into a golf store, and I recommend a place like Edwin Watts over Dick's Sporting Goods because Edwin Watts has a much wider variety of selection. But whatever store is around you, whatever choices you have, you simply want to go in and you want to grab different clubs. Grab probably a 7-iron from a lot of different sets and just line up to the ball, look down, and what do you emotionally feel when you look at that head addressing the ball? I know that sounds weird, but it's very important because it's important that you have confidence in the clubs that you're using. I don't think there's anything more important than that, is that you feel comfortable and confident in that club head. Don't go by the hype that you see from advertisers. Don't go by the hype that you hear from your friends on whatever clubs they just bought. You need to find which clubs you are most comfortable with when you line up. The next thing that you want to do is you want to look at club length. There are plenty of websites out there that if you simply do a Google search on club length according to height, they'll give recommendations according to your height on how long your club should be. For instance, I'm 6'3", and most of those websites tell me that my club should be 1 inch longer than standard. Now, if you're like 5'6" or shorter, you may need to be 1 inch shorter than standard. Now, this isn't really going to affect your distance much, but what it is it's going to, or what it will do, is it will affect how well you strike the ball. So I highly recommend you check your height with what the recommendation lengths are for your clubs. Another customization that you can look at, and this only works if you have forged irons, okay? And that is to get the lie adjusted. And the lie is the angle between the shaft and the head down at the bottom. Now, for me and for taller guys, we tend to need an upright lie. We need to get it adjusted upright. If you're shorter, you might need to get it adjusted a little flatter. Mine, I believe, are 4 degrees upright because of my height. Now, this will only work with forged blades. Cast cavity backs, you're not going to be able to do this because the heating up of the head and the bending of it could cause cracking and breaking. But forged heads, it's fine, you can get that done. If you have cavity backs that are cast and you can't get the lie adjusted, that's fine, don't worry about it. That's just one customization that I recommend if it's an option for you. Now, let me talk to you a little bit about the technology that has come along in the last few years and whether or not you need to replace a set of clubs that may be 5 years old. So my clubs here are 16 years old. I bought them back in 2006 and it's 2023 right now. Every couple of years I'll go into Edwin Watts and I'll check out all the new clubs to see if there's anything that suits my eye that I think might improve my game. And every year I turn around and I walk right back out the store because I don't really see anything that gives me the confidence that these clubs do. So you might be thinking about two things. One, what about worn grooves? Two, what about the newer technology being able to launch the ball further? Well, first let me address that second thing, the technology launching the ball further. The only thing that's really happened in the last 10 years or so that has allowed club makers or club manufacturers to say that their irons hit the ball longer than the previous year's models is they really haven't improved the technology in the face at all or in the club head. What they've actually done is they've simply cranked the lofts a little bit stronger. So what used to be a pitching wedge now, or a pitching wedge loft, now those pitching wedge lofts are more like a 9-iron loft, and that's why you're getting more distance off some of the newer clubs. Simple fix to that, again, if you have forged blades like I do, you can simply go in and get those lofts cranked a little bit stronger. That's one thing that I had to do because these particular clubs were, again, made in 2006. These were the Nike models back when Tiger Woods was playing Nikes, and he preferred higher lofts, higher ball flight. So Nike made all of these with really weak lofts. Well, I've since gone and taken them into a store, and I had them adjusted all the lofts to make a little bit stronger, so they're more in line with today's models. So I get plenty of distance on all of my clubs. I'm getting 130 yards out of my pitching wedge, and then 10 to 15 yards for each club after that. So don't get wrapped up in this hype about, oh, the clubs are hitting the ball longer. Now, a second thing I wanted to talk about was the driver. Now, with the drivers, you hear them every year, they boast about the drivers getting longer and longer and longer. The fact of the matter is, drivers have not really gotten much longer. I saw a video done a couple of years ago by a gentleman in England. He took an 1890 driver, a 1970s driver, and a modern driver. He hit 5 golf balls with each driver. The difference in yardage was only 7 yards. Incredible, only 7 yards. So why are people hitting the ball further now than they were back in 1890 or 1970? It's because of the ball. It's the technology in the golf ball. The only real improvements in drivers and irons over the last 20 years is forgiveness. They've designed them to where they have larger sweet spots, so your mishits won't lose as much distance, and they've also made them to where they hit the ball a little straighter. They don't hit them any further though. All that technology is in the golf ball. So if you have a driver that's 5 years old and you're thinking, oh, I'm falling behind the times, I'm losing yardage compared to the new equipment that's out there, don't buy into that. If you really look at like TaylorMade or Ping or any of these companies, when they say this is our new, this new driver is our longest driver ever, if you really compare it to the last few years models, they may have gained a yard or two, and that's about it. So don't get wrapped up into that. Again, what are my recommendations? Find clubs that you feel comfortable with. Get the right length for your shafts, and if possible, get your irons lie cranked upright or flat depending on your height, if possible. The last thing that I'll discuss is the shaft stiffness. Now, for most players, regular shafts in your irons are just fine. If you're a big, strong brute, real strong guy with incredible swing speed, you might want to go to stiff or extra stiff. But for most people, I would just recommend staying with a regular shaft. You'll get the most control, the most consistency, and you'll get the distance that you need. As for the drivers, really, if you're 60 years old or younger, I would recommend that you go with a stiff shaft. Maybe a regular shaft, but a stiff shaft is going to give you a more solid contact coming in, and you will actually get more distance with a stiff shaft. Oh, one thing I didn't mention about the length on my driver, standard length. A couple of years ago, I used to play with a driver that had 1 inch more length to it. Didn't really notice much of a difference other than having a little bit more control issues with that longer driver. So with your driver, stick with standard length. If you're real short, you might want to go to a shorter length. But for shafts, regular is fine for most people, stiff for most people. No real reason to go to extra stiff unless you're like a long drive championship. If you get a little bit older and you're beyond 60, you're losing some of your swing speed, you can consider a senior shaft, but I really wouldn't back off a regular shaft even as a senior, because you still want some of that firmness when you come into the ball. So those are my recommendations. Find something you're comfortable with. What you really need to focus on is your swing. If you have clubs that when you look down and you see something that you can feel confident in, then the rest is all just your swing. So Andrew, I hope this helps, and I hope it helps the rest of you out there. If you like the video, please hit the like button, subscribe, and if you're interested in learning the entire Mike Austin, Mike Dunaway swing, please check out my full course link down in the description. Thanks. Have a great day.